it takes a bit of faith to say, I'm going to lay out the objective, and however you get there, the way you get there is cool by me as long as you get there, right? And come up with a similar outcome.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider. We are back with Dad, I guess for many of you, Chris Snider, and my business partner, CEO here at EPI and author of Walking to Destiny. We've had Dad on now a couple of times to kind of showcase our life through value acceleration, and then particularly a few months ago when we were working on Walking to Destiny, the second edition. I certainly encourage you guys to visit walkingtodestiny.com to get all the cool stuff associated to the second edition of Walking to Destiny. So that last episode, we kind of focused on the evolution of exit planning. The very first one, we kind of started to talk about us as entrepreneurs, as business owners. So I wanted to have Dad back on the show because I think it's really interesting to see value acceleration come alive, particularly with Dad, who I think matches the demographic of many of your business owners. And so welcome back to the show.
Thanks.
And let's kind of dive into it. So I want to talk today about this entrepreneurial journey, specifically the last 11 years of our entrepreneurial journey together. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I was saying before we came on air, right, I think as an owner, entrepreneur, family business owner, author, creator, game changer within this space over the last 11 years as owners of the Exit Planning Institute. But let's take the audience way back, and maybe this is way, way back. It'd be interesting to see where you take this question. How did you know that you wanted to do business with me? I was saying before the show, I think a lot of people, when I talk to them about their parents or their sons and daughters, are like, oh my God, there's no way I would be in business with my son or daughter. Or, oh my God, I can't believe you work every day with your dad. Yeah. But I think it actually goes deep for you. Like you knew a while that you were like, I want to be in a business with my son, Scott. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I wanted to keep you under my wing.
Yeah. It's like never go too far away from home.
Yeah. I think it goes back to when you were just a little boy. So when you were 2 feet tall, 5, 6 years old, I could tell then that you were a born entrepreneur. And the story I think I've actually shared, at least through social media. But like you used to come up to me and you'd ask me you'd ask me for something and I'd say, well, what are you going to do for it? And I remember because I was kind of raised the same way. Mm-hmm. I'd say, if you come up with half the money, I'll come up with the other half of the money, but you have to come up with your half first. Yeah. And I raised both my kids that way, to make you feel like a sense of ownership, sense of earnings. And you eventually learned that lesson and used to come up to me and say, Dad, what can I do? Instead of saying, can I get this? You'd come up and say, Dad, what can I do? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And most of the time you didn't come up with half, but the lesson was learned. And I could just tell after that you were sort of a born entrepreneur. At the time I was in big corporate, and I write about this in Walking to Destiny 2.0. I was on the track to become a C-level executive in a Fortune 500 or Fortune 200 company. That was my long-term goal. It's one of those classic cases where I arrived 18 years into my career. I was a CIO in a $2.5 billion company and realized I was in the wrong tree. Like this is, Now, I didn't realize that as I was going along, right? Because that was always my goal. But the thing I write about Walk to Destiny is things change, values change, circumstances change. And you change sometimes, you get on a different track just because you changed your mind. Right. So I had decided that big corporate was not going to be my long-term path. And I was still in my early 40s at the time. And so I said, look, I still got a long runway. But if I'm going to make a switch, I remember talking to your mother about this. Like, if we're going to make a career switch here, we got to make it now. I'm still young enough to do it. Sure. And everyone, as you know, in our family have been entrepreneurs. I was the lone black sheep that went into corporate, but I always had this itching to have my own business. And then I thought to myself, okay, well, the way to wealth isn't going to be through C-level executive, right? C-level executives have a lot of wealth.
Yeah.
The only other way that I knew of was to own your own business. And I thought, wouldn't it be great? Because that'd be a path to wealth, and wouldn't it just be great to have like a family legacy that I was able to start with my son. That was kind of a dream.
Yeah. So the other thing that people don't probably know either, so now kind of flash forward, we're in there, right? I had sold my company in 2010, got out of that business, and then came into Aspire Management with you and Andy at the time.
Yeah.
And kind of concurrently to that, as I was kind of cutting my teeth in the business that we're in today and learning like a ton too. I always thought it was super fascinating that you work with so many kind of different styles of business, revenue ranges, types of owners, and types of industries. We also had this dream had finally kind of come together.
Yeah.
We formed a company called Snider Premier Growth.
Yep.
And that company was going to go out and buy a company for us to build and run together outside of the Aspire Management firm, give or take.
Yep.
What I think is interesting is that EPI wasn't necessarily our only or first look. We had looked at like publishing companies. We had looked at a workout facility. Mm-hmm. So what made you finally say this EPI thing, I think this is the way to go out of all the other businesses that we were looking at, non-medical home healthcare we looked at, not anything necessarily related to the Exit Planning Institute, and we finally fell on EPI was the right fit for us?
Well, my first venture after I left Textron was actually in 2001, was the first venture.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know this, but it failed.
Yeah, Duck Hawk, right?
Duck Hawk Technologies.
Yeah.
And my first venture at being a business owner was a failure.
Yeah, it's rough.
And it's basically, if you think back to 2001, 9/11 basically killed my business because I had started it at the beginning of the year. I finally landed that first big client that was going to pay the bills. And then 9/11 hit. It was a manufacturing client. They came back and said, look, we got to cancel the contract. So I went back into corporate again and then started Aspire Management in 2006 after things got kind of sorted out again. And the reason I called it Aspire Management was the original intent of Aspire Management was to go out and to buy, improve, and grow and sell our own businesses as a family enterprise.
Right.
That was its main purpose.
Yeah.
But I've told some people this before. You know what happens when you're starting from scratch and there's no cash coming in, right? You got to kind of take the breadcrumbs when you can get them.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty good reputation coming off of the big Flexalloy win, and after the Flexalloy win, I had grown 2 tech companies pretty substantially. So I had a pretty good reputation. And when business owners and other advisors heard I had started my own consulting company, because I said, look, I'll do consulting until I find something to buy.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Then I'll buy it and I'll drop the consulting. But within about 6 months, I was fully booked.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, God, 6 months has passed. I haven't even looked at a business to buy yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And so that sort of led Aspire Management in the direction of being more of a consulting company. And then Snider Premier Growth was created after Aspire to act as basically the holding company or the financing company. It was really just a financing company, Once we decided that, if you think about it, you, I think, started your thing in 2003. You were 17.
Yeah. Geez, yeah.
I was working with you on that,
Yep.
right? That was sort of,
that was our first.
I was kind of helping you with the strategies. I remember
you were also our bank. You are also our bank.
I was definitely your bank. And remember, I'd go on some sales calls with you every now and then.
Yeah,
they wanted somebody that was a little older because you were
we called it the gray hair effect. Although you still don't have much gray hair, and you didn't have gray hair back then. But I did lean on you hard when we started getting into those big corporate accounts.
Right.
I remember that they had we did luxury apartments, and so our thing was we wanted to work with clients that they use their image to sell their product or service.
Green and clean.
So when we got into those huge multi-acre apartment complexes, these like luxury condos, they would fly in each season their vice president of property management. Yeah. And it was probably a guy your age.
Yeah.
But then there would be a 20-year-old kid sitting there.
Right.
And so I started, by your advice, you said, dude, just start taking me on some of these meetings. I was like, Dad, do you really know a lot about horticulture? And you said, I mean, probably as much as you do. I mean, right? Because I at the time didn't have enough. I didn't have technical training.
Well, you were going to ATI then.
Yeah. But you could hang with that guy and have a business conversation.
But I'd go to the annual conferences with you. Remember?
We did. Yeah,
I was actually thinking about getting certified, taking the test, become a certified landscaper.
Could you imagine that you were a SEPA and then a certified landscape professional? That would have been a hell of a designation.
This was before SEPA, right?
I guess it would have been, right?
This would have been, probably early 2000s. Mm-hmm. This was our first, business venture together. Now, I had Aspire Management, and I was doing my own thing. At the time, I think I was actually still working in corporate because I didn't start Aspire till 2006.
Yeah, you would have been. Yeah, you would have been.
But I had been thinking about creating my own business. You were doing your thing, and I was helping you with that. And you were very, entrepreneurial, very ambitious. You're very dedicated. I remember thinking to myself, wow, like for 17, 18-year-old to be like that into it, like that's a pretty good sign of why I'd want to be in business, like, with you. And that's probably that little thing that you did with M&S Connection, the landscaping, what probably gave me that first really, I had this sense that you were an entrepreneur, but my first real seeing you in action. And that's when I was like, I'm going to leave my job and go start a company and go into business with my son. That was a major motivation for leaving corporate. And that was about 3 years after you had started M&S.
Okay, yeah, right.
And then what happened is I was doing my own thing and I was helping you do your thing. And I think it was 07, I'm not sure what it was, 7 or 10 that we decided to sell the landscape thing
10.
And have you join Aspire. And if you remember, you probably don't remember the advice I gave you. Do you remember the advice I gave you?
During, like when we were thinking about
when you
doing
were,
something
because you were in love with M&S Connection.
Yeah.
That was where your heart and soul was.
Yeah, I think well, so also recession based too, right? I think that was like 2009.
Recession was heavy capital.
Yeah.
Every time we wanted to expand, we had to buy a new truck, new mowers,
For me, sitting at those proposal tables back then too, that big account where I took you in, we had them by that point for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And they were doing like one property just for like the summer season services.
Yeah.
It was like $60,000. That vice president of property management during the recession wanted me to do it for $30,000.
Right.
And I remember looking at you being like, dude, I don't even know how. And you said to me, well, you can't. And I was all still young, a little naive, like, well, how the hell do these bigger guys come in? And you said, well, they do it by volume.
Right.
So, and they're probably, their costs are lower.
They leverage their SG&A.
But I think what you said to me, you started say, look, I know you love the outdoors, you love landscaping, but you also love business. And I think what the advice you're referencing is, you said, it's kind of like that, don't let your business define you. You said, don't get in love with just a landscaping business. Get in love with being an entrepreneur, something like that.
Yeah. I said, don't be in love with this business. Just be in love with business.
Right.
Because the idea was if you learn those basic skills, you can operate almost any business, right?
Yeah. I know that now.
So, and what I wanted to do was, if we were really going to do something together, was I needed to get you into Aspire and I needed to get you to see other businesses. And that's how you got exposure to all these other business models, right? By ripping apart the financials and talking to the owners. And so that Aspire was really a great experience for you because you got a look at, all these different types of businesses, from distribution to manufacturing to publishing to fitness to franchises. Like it was all kinds of stuff. And I felt like you needed to have that well-rounded exposure if we were going to go out and buy something ourselves, right?
Super beneficial.
So you remember you put together a Snider Premier Growth buy side profile that we could hand out, right? Remember you put that together?
We should pull out one of those things.
The different, I actually came across it recently.
Yeah.
And, define, here's the type of businesses that we're looking for. We wanted to buy businesses that were, where the trends were positive, right?
Yeah.
So things that revolved around baby boomers, the demographics were really strong. You remember we looked at several home health care companies We looked at fitness. I mean, that's health, fitness. Those are the things we were into. Plus, we felt they had longevity.
Yeah.
I looked at a wellness company.
Yep.
To go into corporate and help take healthcare costs down. So we looked at a lot of business.
I mean, we at least sat down with three and had like three serious. I mean, we looked at a ton, but we had three serious offers that ended up not working out.
Yeah.
And then we kind of.
Well, and then by that point, I had started to get involved with EPI.
Heavily involved, yeah.
Pete came to me and said, "Hey, do you think this is something you might be interested in buying from us?" And, didn't take me long to think about it. I'm like, well, yeah, because I think this is the hottest trend going right now.
Absolutely.
And it fits in really well with Aspire and what we're doing there. So we actually started to try to buy EPI in the beginning of 2011.
Yeah.
Before the first, it was before I started the first chapter and before I chaired the first conference in Fort Lauderdale in November.
Yeah, November of 11, yeah.
We had been negotiating with Pete and Rich. Me and a team of other people had been negotiating with Rich and Pete during that time frame.
Yeah.
And we were actually so close to getting that deal done that we were supposed to announce it at the conference that year, but we didn't get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And so time just passed. And then what happened is there was another group that came in that I was not originally part of, and they came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to get in with us as a partner?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll get in with that." So they liked that too because I had already been a member for 4 years. Right. And so then that deal fell through. Do you remember? And I remember the day Rich called me and he said, the deal fell through. And I'm like, "Well, are you still interested in an offer from us?" And he said, "Well, yeah." And I said, "You remember I talked to you?" And I said, "Hey, I'd really like to do that. What do you think? But I'm not sure." And I still remember you saying, "Dad, do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
It's a good deal. Do it." And so I went back to Rich and I said, "I'm going to do it on my own. I don't need to have partners. I can do it on my own and I can close this deal in 60 days.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Well, that got my attention."
Right.
And that's exactly what happened.
We drove to Chicago.
We drove to Chicago. We got into a room. We banged out the deal with Rich in the I believe it was the Hyatt Regency.
It was.
In Schaumburg, Illinois.
Yep.
We banged out a deal all day,
maybe
2 days. I think we were there, and we had a deal done, and
we went into kind of transition mode.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember at the end, we bought it in September, and we had a SEPA program coming up in November, and we didn't want to announce that right before the SEPA program to rock the boat.
Yeah.
So we decided to keep it quiet and just go as normal, right?
Yeah.
And run that SEPA program, and then there was a break between, because remember, we're only doing two SEPA programs. We do one in May and we do one in November. So we said, well, we'll wait till after the SEPA program and end of the year, and then we'll make an announcement. We'll start 2013 fresh, and that's what we did.
Yeah, and then shortly thereafter that, right? So now we're in the business. So 13 was a big year because that's when we made the announcement. We implemented the value acceleration methodology, which totally changed the curriculum of the SEPA credentialing program because now it followed your process.
Yeah. And
we learned a lot that year because it was the first time we were teaching your process to advisors, not owners, right?
Exactly.
So you had evolved that kind of Biggs model into this value acceleration methodology that you would then go teach to professional advisors.
Yeah.
Next milestone moment for me then is we kind of settle in that year up to a year and a half. And then in July of 2014, I can remember sitting down together and saying, I think we got to move our operations, like our office from Algonquin, Illinois to Cleveland. And that's when you asked me to go in and run this thing. And that's when you say that like, I need you to go in and run it for like 3 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's turned into 2014 to 2023.
Yeah, 12 years.
But why that move? And what were you seeing then in 2014 when you said, we got to get this thing to Cleveland and really get hands-on?
Well, I was really interested in EPI just because the demographics just, but if you remember, EPI was a part-time job for me.
It was. Right? Well, you still had
main business
very
was my
active
consulting business. I was busier than heck. And I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with it. but I knew that all the demographics were pointing, and my practice kept sort of merging more and more towards exit planning versus just mergers and acquisitions. I started to do family businesses. So, I mean, I was actually experiencing as a member or as a consultant this holistic thing that Pete and Rich talked about. And I was getting, it just completely made sense to do it. And then I guess, I just was always a believer, and I always advise my clients to do this too. And, this is sort of my roots too. My roots really going back to my M&A roots back to Sherwin-Williams is I was actually on the integration team for Sherwin-Williams. So I wasn't cutting the deal, but I was the team that kind of parachuted in after a deal was done to integrate what we had just acquired into our business. And so I spent like 2 years just doing that. And one of the pieces of advice I always gave my clients is don't be in a big hurry to make changes, right? Yeah. First of all, everybody is apprehensive when it goes down, and we saw with our members were apprehensive, like who's this Snider guy, and like what's happening.
And he's a member. Is he trying to feed his own business?
Yeah, right. There's all this. A lot of mistrust at that point, and a lot of confusion, a lot of I call it apprehension. So we didn't want to make a lot, and I always advise my clients too: don't make a lot of changes in the beginning. Just ease your way into it, right? Yeah. Learn the business, because you see a business from the outside in. We all know through attractiveness, readiness. Yeah. It's not the same as the inside out, right? Yeah. Readiness is not the same as attractiveness. Right. And you don't really get that glimpse of readiness until you deep dive into that business. Due diligence, you try to make sure that you're covering all your ducks in due diligence, but you find out a lot more once you dive into the business. I didn't want to make a lot of changes, but we just weren't getting, we needed to bring the business back to Cleveland so we could get our arms around it. Right.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
And I didn't have time to run it. And to be honest, at the time, given the size of it, I said, Scott's pretty young. Hey, this might be a nice thing for him to take and kind of cut his teeth with. Right. And I did what I asked you to do. I needed somebody to do it. Yeah. So it was you or hire somebody. And I said to you, I need you to do this for the family for 2 years. I don't care whether you like it or not. The family has made an investment. I can't do it. I want a family member, and if after 2 years you don't want to do this anymore, we'll either replace you or we'll sell it or something. Right. I need you to put your head down and do this for the family, if for no other reason, for the next 2 years.
Well, that's kind of where that lesson kind of came into play, too, that earlier lesson you were saying, like, don't let your business define you, right? This landscaping thing. Because what I did realize once I started rolling up my sleeves in the summer of 14 was that, I was like, the same types of things existed, right? People, culture, systems, growth, opportunities, strategy, same types of things that I was doing every day in my landscaping company. Now I can do here, but in a totally different industry. I was, I don't know, you probably might have, I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this book. It's by Chuck Blakeman. It's called Making Money is Killing Your Business, How to Build a Business You'll Love and Have a Life Too. And if you haven't read it, it was actually recommended by a SIPA who came through the course. And I just thought it was an interesting, like edgy title, like Making Money is Killing Your Business. But in the back it says, use your business to build your ideal lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So you and Chuck actually have a lot in common, right? You dive a lot more into this holistic planning. He talks about different stages of business and how they run. And when I read this book, it made me reflect on our EPI journey. That's why I kind of brought it with me today, because I think we have many milestones along the way in our business journey. Like the first one that really sticks out after purchase was that July move, right? A lot of things started to go in the right direction for us after that. And if I could bottle up, at least for me, this 2014 to probably 2018, we're in what Chuck would call like survival mode. We're talking, it's like me and at the time another office admin and you, and we're really concentrated, survival mode is concentrated on sales, revenue growth. Yeah. So if you think about that time frame, we're super focused on content growth, evolving the methodology, getting more SIPAs into the program trained. We made an aggressive run at launching chapters. We reworked member benefits and started doing this, what we see today, this credentialed plus and credentialed. We wrote you wrote the Walking Destiny book during that time frame. We relaunched the summit. It used to be called the Exit Planning Institute International Annual Conference. We relaunched the summit. And then as we moved into 2019, and again, in Chuck's words, I think we moved in kind of like a stability mode. So 2017, we started to get the credential improved at a lot of different large financial institutions. And by 2019, we had a team. We had a big formal office. We had a bit more process. We could take more vacations. I can remember wanting, like, being able to take more time away from the business, although it certainly isn't the time we see today. But you were like, it wasn't the times back in M&S days where I'd fall asleep on the floor in your living room, right? Like, we had some, what I would consider stability. And for the first time, another milestone moment for me was in 2019, we sold 500 SEPAs. I still have the champagne cork in my office today. We're in this office here today where our studio is. And I can remember all coming out into the bullpen and having a celebration. And we did it like in the last like couple weeks of the year, right before Christmas. We did it on like, I think the date's on there. I think it's like December 19th. And I think that moving in to 2020, from a business growth standpoint, we felt pretty good. And then our COVID pandemic hit. And to me, that's like the next huge milestone for us. We talk about this a lot on the podcast too, because it was so impactful. It not only changed our business, it changed our relationship for the better. And it allowed us to look at some personal financial planning for the first time, which I always commend you on, because seeing you go through it was like an insightful process. And I think that as an owner going through it yourself, you kind of have a lot of insights to give to owners. Yep. So I want to dive into that run right after the break. So stick with us, and we'll be back just in a couple minutes.
The Exit Planning Institute is the authority in exit planning. With its award-winning process, the Value Acceleration methodology provides deep insights into how to help business owners create more significant companies while blending and aligning their business, personal, and financial goals. EPI brings together the world's most elite exit planning advisors to form the EPI community. The EPI community represents over 15,000 professional advisors worldwide, including its 5,000 certified exit planning advisors. These advisors include financial advisors, growth consultants, CPAs, attorneys, M&A advisors, amongst others, who come together to expand their knowledge, create and innovate, network and relationship build, grow their practices, and better attract and engage business owner clients. Join EPI today and gain access to the community, content, courses, credential, and conference that you as the professional advisor need in order to harness the opportunity with small to lower middle market business owners who strive to grow a company of significance, thus having a highly valuable and transferable company. Follow the Exit Planning Institute on LinkedIn and visit earnsepa.com to learn more about the community leading the exit planning profession.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Exit is Now podcast. So right before the break, we were talking about, to me, we fast forwarded a bunch of years, but the next like big moment, so 2014, we moved the business Chicago to Cleveland, and we started to really roll up our sleeves, a lot of growth activities. 2020, from a business standpoint, I felt pretty good. And then the COVID-19 pandemic hits, and at the time, how old were you? Like 60? That was like you're celebrating your 60th birthday then?
Yeah, if you remember, we had
that year, right?
We had gone to I was turning 60.
Turning 60?
No, I turned 60
the year prior.
In December of 2019. Yeah. We had just gotten back from St. John.
Yep.
Where I ran the 8 tough miles at 60 years old as kind of a milestone moment for my 60th birthday. Mm-hmm. And a month later,
I turn to you and say, so Harvard University had shut down their school, and we had our SEPA program in March 2020 at Georgia State University, their downtown executive campus and their law campus. And I remember I had called the school and I said, look, if the school shuts down, does your executive center where you can host programs shut down schools too? And they said, yeah, if the school shuts down, everything shuts down. And they said, but we had no intention yet. I was like, but hypothetically, I could fly in 90 people for a SEPA program, let them sit through class on Monday and on Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning, the school decides to shut down, and then we're shut down. And they're like, yes, that could happen. So I had to come to you and say, look, I think we can't do that. We can't fly people in. because then if people can't get out and all this stuff, right? Big uncertainty. And then we canceled March in Atlanta, April in Cleveland, and Chicago in May, basically within the next couple of weeks. And honestly, I always describe it as like you made the nut and bolt, right? But you have no trains, planes, boats, cars, no way to get it to your final destination. And so I can imagine just turning 60, riding this high of running this, this 8 tough miles, having a pretty good growth business, and it's all abruptly stopped. What were you thinking?
Well, again, I write about this, and this is one of the new things I write about Walking to Destiny, because this has happened after the first edition, right?
Yeah.
Is prior to COVID, we were, for the previous 5 years, we had a compound annual growth rate of over 42%. Mm-hmm. We were growing over 40%. Now, hyper growth is 20%. So we were growing from the 16, 17, 18, 19, and we fully expected that to continue into 20.
Absolutely.
So we were on fire, and things were great. And I don't know what you're saying about free time, because 2019, I traveled almost 200 days.
Yeah, same with me.
And you traveled more than me.
225 was my top.
Right. I was at like 192 or whatever. I was just under 200. I went to all those events all over the country with James Jack.
Yeah, right.
And I remember coming back after that, all that travel, and saying to you, you can't do that to me. Like,
I gotta slow down.
You cannot
It's crazy.
Keep me on the road like that. I'm getting too old for that. So going into 2020, I had said to you, like, you gotta, like, I still like to do it, but I can't be like on the road for 200 days a year.
Stuff.
And the interesting thing is, when it hit, there was a lot of confusion, because not only did we have to cancel programs, we had millions of dollars of prepaid SEPA programs. People already paid for them, that we needed a way to deliver, and we didn't have any way to deliver. So if you think about that from a balance sheet perspective, those are all liabilities. Either you have to deliver the product or you have to return the money. And so there was a lot of confusion at that time. The word scary comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
As you know, I've had over a 40-year career. That was one of the scariest moments for me since I was a business owner, because I wasn't sure we were going to make it.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about that whole thing is I thought to myself, well, this is going to test the damn culture. Like, all these investments we've been making, we had problems with one of our employees. Like, we're going to find out if all these investments in our culture, in our leadership, are going to pay off. And as you know, and of course, I keep saying, I write about this in Walking to Destiny too. Our team, like, totally responded.
Yeah,
they were phenomenal. I say in the book, I call them heroes. They were just heroic what they did. And we all, put everything else aside, and we were like, we've got to get this online program built, and we've got to do it by the end of April.
Yeah, because we had
a bunch of 45 days, and this was like mid-March.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, well, how the hell are we going to, like, but that's all we did. If you remember, we were working like literally around the clock.
45 days, literally around the clock.
Yeah. I mean, it was, you went to sleep, you got up, worked on online SEPA. Yeah. You went to sleep, got up, and worked on. So, like, and we were like an assembly, like, everybody had something to do, and it all came together, And I would also say it was also not only a test of our culture, which passed with flying colors and made us an even stronger culture today, but it also tested our customer capital.
It did.
Because all those customers that had prepaid, they worked with us. We had a few people that just were difficult, wouldn't work with us. But I'd say that was like 10%. 90% of our customers came back and said, and in particular, I'm thinking about UBS, if you don't mind me calling, and James Jack. we found out what kind of a company that is and what kind of a person he is. And they worked most of the SEPAs and, particularly UBS, they really worked with us, say, look, we'll help you get through this thing.
Yeah.
And I'd also say that the PPP for us actually worked exactly the way it was supposed to be designed to work.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, you and I didn't get paid that year.
No.
But our employees, we didn't have to lay anybody off.
Yeah.
And
everybody got a paycheck.
In fact, everybody got not only a paycheck, everybody got a raise.
I think at the end of the year, we did do our standard kind of raises too. Yeah.
So, and we didn't want to lay anybody off because we had invested so much in our culture and in our human capital. We're like, if we lay them off, we got to redo all of that. So there's a huge loss of investment there. So the PPP money, at least for us, actually did help us maintain payroll, maintain our staffing. Because if you also remember, not to keep going on and on about this, but these are really good lessons for business owners and for advisors who are advising business owners. So me, I run a business from something called RPE, revenue per employee. That's a big number for me, right?
Yep.
And what we had done differently in 2019, this is like why I talk about things being fast and flexible.
Yeah.
Like things can change on a dime. And what we decided in 19 is that we were ramping up 40% growth a year. What was happening is we were hiring people too late.
Right.
In the game.
Yeah.
And so it takes people, 6 months to kind of ramp up and get their legs under them. And, we weren't, what was happening is our staff was getting overloaded because we weren't bringing people in fast. So in 19, we said, well, we'll solve that problem. We'll just eat some cash flow. We'll put some cash up front and we'll hire these people early.
Yeah.
So that we've got them trained and oriented and ready to go as we roll into 2020. Well, then revenue took a dive.
Yeah, right. I think March of 2020, I've never seen anything like it, even in my landscaping days. 0 revenue.
Yeah.
None. It was crazy.
And so we were carrying way too many staff because our numbers that year actually dropped about 10%.
Yep.
It wasn't horrible, but it dropped it. But we were staffed for another 40% gain.
It's true.
And we dropped 10%. So we were way overstaffed if you just look at the business by the numbers. But when you also look at the other half of the equation, I call it the other end of the stick, and you go, wow, I really invested a lot of money in human capital, leadership training, in culture. I'm going to lose all that if I lay these people off. We've got to find a way to just carry them. And actually, PPP was very helpful in that way.
So we get through that year and we start off 2021 and we've kind of stabilized, right? We're still certainly in our pandemic, but the online program evolved again at the end of that year. We relaunched another program 2021 to get some revisions in. And the next milestone for me was June 2021, where you officially named me the president of the company. Mm-hmm. And I think that for me, that's a huge moment. And I think in business ownership too, right? You being the CEO, president, and then relinquishing one of those titles to put me into that role is a big transition point, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
And that year generally was another, I think, big milestone moment because you were also a grandfather. You became a grandfather that year. Mm-hmm. You gave me the president's title. And it was a year where I
moved out of the office.
You moved out of the office. And to me, it was value acceleration methodology in form. I think that truly I can say in the start of 2021, we as owners made a deliberate effort to align business, personal, financial goals for you and for me. And I think truly you could see value acceleration methodology come alive in our business. So talk about that. Talk about stepping away from the day-to-day business so that you can spend the year focusing on estate planning, personal planning, financial planning, and your kind of advice for owners. Because it was super impactful. I mean, if you look 2 years later.
So in the late 17 to 19 is where that kind of starts, because I was working a lot, and you were too. That's
ton of travel, ton of work.
I was working a lot, and I was approaching 60, and it was that classic case of a business owner that is not only out of balance, but the three legs are not in harmony. There was no personal time, and there was no financial planning time.
Yeah, right.
It was just all about the business. Anybody that's been part of a business that's growing at 40% a year, you know what I'm talking about. It's like you're hanging on, the thing is taking off, and you don't want to get off of that ride, because you got to ride it while it's good. You know?
Yeah.
And so, but I knew, again, being, a person of the three legs of the stool, I knew I was out of balance, and they weren't harmonious, and that I was approaching 60 at the end of 19. And I was behind on my personal and financial planning. I knew that. So I actually started that process, I think at 18 or maybe 19, began that process. Mm-hmm. But then when COVID hit and 2020 hit, that went back up on, I don't have time to be working on that. We're trying to save the business here.
Right. So you shelved it.
So that got shelved. And I remember coming into 2021, actually prior to 21, we were in our strategy sessions at the end of the year, which we always do at the end of the year, saying to you, I need to get this personal and financial planning train back on track here, right? And the only way I'm going to do that, I cannot be traveling 200 days a year. I cannot be, coming into the office. You got to take the business. I need to create time for myself to work on these other tracks, because now I'm a little bit behind, and I need to catch up. And I think the other factor there too, there's a as an owner, there's a level of discomfort you live with, and it's a really a control issue. How you would do something, you're taking responsibility for it. You know how it needs to get done, or how you want it to get done. And it takes a bit of faith to say, I'm going to lay out the objective, and however you get there, the way you get there is cool by me, as long as you get there, right? And come up with a similar outcome. And I have to trust that you'll do that. And I think what happened for me from that standpoint is in 2020, seeing our team respond. It's like that Marine commercial where everybody's running away from the fire and the Marines are running in. Yeah. That's how I view my team. They were all running into the fire, and that blew me away. Okay, it's like I tell people, it's kind of like you raise your kids and you think you're doing all the right things, but you really don't know until they get tested.
Sure.
And for me, it's like I thought we were doing all the right things for our team, but I really didn't know until they got tested. They got tested and they ran into the fire, and that created a lot of confidence for me in their ability and in your ability, because you did the same thing when COVID hit. You stepped up big time, and you didn't run, you weren't weak. And that showed me okay, this we've got something really special here. And we actually then in 21, not only I'll get to my personal stuff, but it's important to understand how I was able to get off on that. The reason I was able to do that is the team had built, I had confidence in the team. And if you remember, we also went into some significant leadership training that year.
Yeah, well, we reformed the entire leadership team and then put them into leadership training.
They were still very young. Yeah. My concern was, they're definitely motivated, they're definitely smart, but they don't have the experience. And we invested heavily in leadership development, because I was also okay, I know they've got the DNA to be a great team. Now it's a matter of whether or not we're willing to invest in them and in their skill development. And we did that. So while that was going on and was going well, thank you, Fred Johnson.
Right.
I saw him at the summit a couple of years ago, and I walked up to him like, "You son of a gun!"
Yeah, you were right.
You were so right. Because we had a lot of conversations about that. He did a great job. And anyways, so that allowed me to step away from the business to focus on these other, the personal and the financial planning leg. But I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have confidence in the team. So my first piece of advice to business owners is you got to have a team that it frees you from the day-to-day of the business. Yeah. You're never going to make any progress. You're first, forget financial planning and forget personal planning. Get a team in place where you don't have to be there every day.
Yeah, I think it's like a critical step. I think it really is, right? For any business owner, it's like we talk about the holistic planning and it's all important, but also almost fits. It's like a puzzle. It has kind of got to fit together. So I think it's great advice, right? Is that you weren't going to be able to go concentrate on the personal, the financial, the estate planning, the wills and trusts, and do that type of thing if you didn't concentrate the years before in building and structuring that team.
Well, and that's what I write about. It's like, that took like 10 years to, with ups and downs to kind of build that level of confidence in the team. And I was fortunate to have you,
Yeah, right. There's a different
not
trust
every owner
level
has
as well,
that
right? The deeper trust level.
That level of that kind of a relationship, with their successor, where they've been working with them for 10 years. But what I'm saying is you still can do deliberate, intentional things. Define what those are. And then my other piece of advice to business owners is at some point, you just got to make a leap of faith.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you get comfortable being uncomfortable? You just kind of got to, people ask us that a lot. You just got to do it.
I call it the leap of faith. So this past summer, as you know, down at the lake house, I have this flagstone patio in the back, right? It's a beautiful flagstone, but the lacquer had come off of it. It was full of cracks. And I spent 2 or 3 days just grouting and repairing all the cracks because I wanted to bring it back to life, right? And the thing is, I'd get done grouting. I'd go out the next day. I'd look at it. Oh, there's another crack. Oh, there's another crack. Oh, there's another crack. Well, I could have been filling cracks all summer. At some point, you just got to say, I'm going to move on. I got to move on.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing where the owner's got to just say, look, I got to, and they might have to fail a couple times or, but I got to test them. I got to walk away and I got to test them. I got to find out what they're made of.
Yeah.
And so you just have to do it.
So by doing that, you move from June 2021, naming me the president, then finishing out 2022. And that year in 2022, we grew by 67%, not the standard 42 that we've been doing in years past, but by kind of letting go from the business standpoint and just kind of trusting the team, trusting the process, we grow by 67%. And which led us into this year. So now looking at that 2021, 2022, and now into 2023 journey, how's that feel? Is like, I would say you're a truly decentralized owner from the business. We use you, and it's just like this. We saw this at our mid-year reflection back in July. We looked at, it was interesting, and maybe some of our followers saw the picture I had on my LinkedIn. It's a picture of Chris up there teaching and doing the stuff that I think you love doing the most, which is empowering your leaders to go lead and develop even more. If you looked at the leadership team at EPI today, average age is 31. Yeah. So you still have a pretty young team. So a lot in there. Let's kind of unpack that. So now looking at, sitting here in 2023 as a decentralized owner from the business, how's that feel? Knowing that it seems like you did something right because you grew by 67%.
Feels great.
Yeah, right? I would assume that it's got to feel pretty damn good.
It feels, beyond great. And there's a sense of, today I have a sense of peace was a word that kind of comes to mind, a sense of peace of mind because, I'm through all the financial and estate planning. I know things are all taken care of. If something were to happen, everybody's aware of what to do. Yeah. It's all documented. Yeah. It's all covered. So, I think for a lot of business owners, they're so busy in the business, they know that, and we know this through our survey, they know that financial planning and personal planning are important. Yeah. But it's not urgent. And the business is urgent, right? And besides, no offense to the financial advisors or the personal planning advisors, it ain't fun. Like, working in the business is like fun.
Yeah, well, you're an entrepreneur.
Going on trips, speaking, teaching,
solving problems.
Solving problems, it's just fun work. And, I would put like financial planning and personal planning is like up there on my top 10 list of things I want to do to, that are fun, although, they're necessary to do. And maybe there's a lesson in there for financial, to try to make it a little more fun, know,
maybe.
But it's a necessary thing to do. And when you do get it done, it also, like for me, it was a great learning experience. So that I was fascinated by all the different trusts and tax laws, and I'm surrounded by a pretty good team of personal advisors, and just sitting in those workshops and understanding how things worked. And I asked a lot of questions because, they were saying, well, just do this. And I'm like, well, why? I need to know why. So I learned a lot.
Yeah.
So that part of it was kind of fun. But you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And after you're done, you do have a sense of peace of mind. Like, wow, that's done. I'm in good shape. If something were to happen, we know the direction. And at the same time, the staff is just killing it. So
yeah, but going back to that personal planning stuff, when you were just talking about it a little bit, there's a lot of deliverables if you think about it. But it took you like a year and a half to really get them all done.
Oh, way more than that.
So
way more.
Like we had our first family meeting during that time.
Yeah.
You created a financial plan, really secured a new financial advisor, got some things transferred over. You created an estate plan. You created trusts.
Yep.
You created
Several
a personal plan. And I think this year, I'd like to think that you're spending more time at your lake house than you probably ever have. Is that fair to say?
That's why I have this great tan.
Yeah, you're working on this great tan. He's been out on his new boat.
Because I have, and this was another thing, I guess, a good lesson for business owners and too is, our team has been really supportive of my transition, and going through the book was a big, job. Was really a big job. And then we had, another record-setting summit, and the team, I remember with the leadership team, talking to the leadership team about it, and they were like, well, you got to get through the summit. You got to get through your book. Well, once you are, you're free, you're free to take some time. And so I have. The last 2 months have been like
awesome.
I've spent a lot of time in my lake.
Yep.
I've had a lot of people down.
Yep.
I've had a lot of time to reflect, like I say, like my estate plans, I've met with my financial, there's a few things we got to do, a couple of changes we got to make, but it's not significant. I have time on my hands.
Yeah.
Which is like, and I don't have to worry about checking in or attending the weekly team meetings or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a great feeling because the business isn't me anymore. It's us.
It truly is. I think that even to look at this podcast, right? There's like dozens of guests that we have that all kind of power this community.
Right. That's great to see.
And it has, I like to think that it has become not just Chris Snider, the creator and author of this book. It's how our certified exit planning advisors in our community, our instructors, our chapter presidents, our partners in the partner hall at the summit, how we've come together at the community to evolve this methodology forward for business owners.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to Chris about the future, but I'm going to do that when we come back. So just stick around. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
For business owners, by a business owner. Walking to Destiny is your essential resource for understanding what makes your business highly profitable and significant. It becomes a business owner's handbook to know how to rapidly grow value and ultimately unlock the personal wealth trapped in business. Exit Planning Institute CEO Christopher Snider demonstrates how strategic exit planning will help you achieve improvements today while positioning you to build wealth for generations. Secure your success along other value creators. Discover, prepare, and decide what your walk to destiny will ultimately be. If executed correctly, these strategies can grow a business owner's wealth by 10 times. Walking to Destiny, the second edition, the 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Get your copy today at www.walkingtodestiny.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast, hanging out with Dad here. So kind of came through over the last hour or so. We've kind of talked through all the way from the beginning to where Dad said, hey, I want to do business with my son. Now we sit here in 2023 with a business that has basically decentralized itself away from Chris. And that was an about 11-year journey to buy the business, integrate it into what we believe, and then kind of spit you out on the other side to say the leadership team is going to run this thing for me. And we talked about your personal planning. I said earlier, too, that I think for me in reflection, particularly for you, the last 3 to 5 years has been a true example of value acceleration methodology at work. My new thing is calling, and we probably talk about it in Walking to Destiny, the second edition, is this more value acceleration centric lifestyle.
Right.
And so when people ask about case studies, I say, well, you should look at my dad.
Yeah.
Because today in 2023, he's truly embraced all three. So interesting question, because you have this, you're the creator of the methodology and then you're living your own methodology.
Yeah.
So for the business owners and even for the advisors listening into the podcast, where have you struggled as an owner in your own methodology? Is there struggle points for you?
Oh, yeah. It's so much easier to talk about it than do it. You know, that's always the case.
Yeah.
I think part of what makes it so real is we live it. And I tell advisors this all the time, you know, in the SEPA program, the best way to learn value acceleration is to do it.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Exactly.
Do it for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and do it for your own business. Because, you know, how convincing is it if you're sitting across from an owner and the owner goes, okay, hotshot, do you do it? And you go, oh, well, no, I just do one of the three legs. I just teach it. Well, you know, what owners want to see is they want to see evidence, proof. And I think that was always part of me too, even when I, you know, like as a consultant, it's like I'm consulting and they're like, well, if it's so, why don't you go run materials management or you go operate a business, see how you do it, right? Very much harder to do it than to write about it. But I think we've made a real conscious effort because we really do believe it. It is a way of life. And I think we are, you know, not to toot our own hat here too much, but I do think that we have been successful in accomplishing one thing in particular, which is owner independence.
Right.
So one of the things I wrote about, and I tell CEPAs this too, is like the first thing I look for when I'm meeting an owner, getting to know an owner, is how independent are they from the business? Forget all this methodology stuff, right? Forget 4 C's. Is this owner independent from the business or not? Because ultimately, that's where you want to be.
Right.
And owner independence is a form of an exit option.
It is.
The other thing that it does is it creates options because now you don't have to be in a big hurry, right?
That's true.
So you've done the proper financial planning outside the business, so you have some level of security there. Maybe you've even closed your wealth gap already because you've already planned, right? Or maybe you don't have everything you want, but you certainly have what you need, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And all of that is driven by saying, the way I do that is to remove myself from the business. So, you know, how do you, when you're going forward, how do you do that? Like that's your ultimate goal. Just focus on that one thing, right?
Yeah, right.
And all the other stuff sort of falls into place because in order to be independent of the business, you have to have a secure financial plan. You have to have something to do outside the business so you're not bored when you're not there. You have to have a strong team that can run the business without you. You have to have good customers that have relationships with your people and not you. You know what I mean? But the truth of it is when you're running a business, and I talk about EPI being a startup. It was so small when we bought it.
I totally agree.
I call it, you know, you call it survival mode. I call it startup mode. It was a startup. And then we evolved into what I still feel that we're still in early stage growth. From a venture capital standpoint, they would define us, I think, as early stage growth. We were experiencing rapid growth. We had a little blimp on the radar because of COVID, but then we bounced right back and boom, we're off and we're taking it's because I still believe we're in a blue ocean. I still believe we're in early stage growth. I probably won't be around to see it mature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that where we're going, the team's going to take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah. So right before the break too, and even on the break, you used the word at peace. We talked a little bit more about personal planning. And then during the break, you said, I've had one hell of a summer. So what's next? So the business is stabilized and growing. Mm-hmm. The personal plans are there, the personal financial plans. So for the owner that's listening, that's similar age, right? Young 60s, early 60s, business decentralized, has time. What are you doing now? What's next for you?
Well, all of that just hit, so it's like, if you were to talk to me like 2 months ago, I was buried deep trying to finish my book and get
to the
prepared
summit,
for the summit and deliver a keynote.
Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't be saying that 2 months ago. I was very much, busy in the business.
Sure.
And so I think what happens is you asked me, did I struggle with my own methodology? The hardest part is the personal planning.
It is.
Yeah. I just have such a greater feel for it. I've walked owners through personal envisioning. I've run the workshops. I've seen them. I've helped them figure out what they want to do next. I give stories in there of clients I work with, and they've transformed into these marvelous lives. And but it's hard to kind of let go. So, again, it's only been a couple months since I've started to, enjoy the summer a little bit and enjoy my lake house. But it's given me for the first time a chance to breathe, a chance to kind of think about my role going forward, what I really want to do. Mom and I have a lot of ideas.
Yeah, reflection, as you talked about.
Yeah, reflection. I'm just kind of reflecting on it. And it'll sort of, but right now I just want to break,
you said when we were down at
I've been at it for 41 years.
That's right, 41 years, you're finally getting a break.
So I really, this summer, I just really wanted to, after the summit, I really wanted to just, spend some time down at my lake house over the summer. As you know, we've been having parties down there every weekend. Craig West actually is coming down in a couple of weeks. To spend a couple of nights down there with us. And so I just, and then we'll see where it goes from there. I know what I like to do, and I still have opportunities to do it. I love to teach.
Yeah.
I love to develop leadership.
Yep.
I'd love to be able to have more time to give to the SEPAs,
Sure.
Maybe a coaching model.
Yeah.
Put together a coaching model where maybe I can actually take on a more formalized role of coaching SEPAs. You've got me doing most of the chapter launches. And some of those moms coming with me on those trips.
Yeah, that's kind of nice too.
So, I don't think you can't like run your way into your next life. You can't. You have to take your time and see how things sort of develop. And I think it takes a lot of patience and takes a lot of like reflection. And so I'm just easing my way into that,
Well, I think that's good. I think that's good advice. It's like slowing down to speed up, right? Like, let's just take a break a little bit, reflect, and see where we want to go and where we want to go.
You just did the same thing with our team. We had a mid-year reflection where you said, hey, let's slow down. Let's take a break. The team came down to the lake.
Yeah.
We had a couple of days where we kind of reflected on how we're doing this year. And, you kind of just have to take that little break.
Well, always interesting hanging out with you. I'm sure the audience has a ton of questions and stuff for you as well along the way. So we'll certainly have you back. I've been trying to have him on the show once a quarter. So you'll likely see him back before the year is out. So with that, folks, our next show is September 13th. Please listen, subscribe, leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. With that, we will see you in a couple weeks. Thanks, guys.